What's up everyone, this is Eflex and welcome back to another A Producer's Approach video. So first off, I want to say happy Thanksgiving to everyone that celebrates Thanksgiving. This is the Thanksgiving special video for the A Producer's Approach channel. And for this video, we're going to be looking at Laszlo's song Supernova. So first off, I want to address that normally I release videos for right now set on Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday, but since the holidays are coming around, I figured I'd do, a special video for the certain days of the holidays. So I want to do one for Thanksgiving. I want to do a Christmas video, like a special kind of Christmas APA video, and then a special maybe New Year's APA video or New Year's Eve or something like that. But basically, Thanksgiving doesn't fall on a Wednesday, so this week you'll have more videos for the Thanksgiving week. So that's just kind of my gift to you guys and just something I want to do myself. So just a pure coincidence that Supernova actually comes out in November. That was a pretty awesome coincidence. I didn't pick the song for that reason. I just figured this song would be a really cool song to do for a review on Thanksgiving. So overall, that's just what I want to do. And if you guys don't know, the structure for these A Producer Approach videos is basically I have an intro with a personal backstory to start it off, and then after that I do my breakdown and analysis, and then after that I do an outro section where I just talk about the song and just kind of wrap my opinions and things up for what I think about the song and the video. So first off, we'll get into Laszlo's Supernova intro and my backstory. So back in 2014, I actually was a big fan of Monstercat, and I was still pretty diehard listening to Monstercat. So I listened to every single release when they did the Monday, Wednesday, Friday release schedule. And this song came out in November 10th, 2014, and I think the album this came on, which was, I believe, maybe 022. I can't remember exactly which album it was, but I will say within that album number that came out, I do remember a lot of the songs that came out within that album, and a good amount of those songs were really good, whether it be electro, house, drum and bass, dubstep, like future bass. Everything was really just like really good at this time. A lot of the original first founding member Monstercat artists, almost like I'd like to call them like the first wave of the OG artists, their style and music, they were starting to improve at this time, because they started on Monstercat in 2011 or 12. Give them 2 years and they would improve. And also the second wave of OG artists. So for an example, artists like World, Laszlo, as you see here, Nitro Fun, they were starting to come onto the label and make their mark, whereas the OGs like Muzzy or Muzz now, Noise Storm, Stephen Walking, they were all developing their sounds now. So at this time, it was a really great time for releases. So in terms of me listening to certain releases, I know personally I like to have songs on repeat if I really like it, and Supernova was at least on repeat for a couple weeks while I was listening to a bunch of the other releases. And it was only a couple weeks because there were so many good songs coming out each week that I'd switch like between songs and just listen to those songs. But overall, this is going to be Laszlo's song Supernova. And one thing I did want to clarify before I go into my breakdown, I had my buddy Very Berry leave a comment on my Matt Duke video asking what the difference between complextro and electro house is. So I just wanted to clarify from my view, electro house to me is the umbrella term. So think of it as like a big umbrella. Electro house is the umbrella, and then like subgenres that branch off from electro house are like complextro, bass house, and like big room house. Big room house can like kind of go between regular house and kind of electro house, but the best way I kind of like to describe the complextro I like is that usually there's a lot of wubs, and it's like, you know, a slower version of dubstep. That's kind of where Complextro came from. Instead of 140, you put it at 128. But the Complextro I personally like, and you'll see in this song, is when they have like a lot of wubs, but it's really melodic, and there's a chord structure and a root note that kind of guides that whole kind of song with a certain chord structure. So even when the wubs are playing, like, it follows that certain chord structure, where in you know, a kind of big room house styled electro house song, it's more like this isn't the greatest reference, but it's more like an Animals style song by Martin Garrix, where, you know, there's like a really cool chordal section, and then like the drop kind of switches up to, you know, something else. There's like kind of a big switch up. For me, like, I'm not the biggest fan of that, but I know that's under the umbrella of electro house. So, you know, think of like, you know, bass house, Complextro, and kind of like big room house. They all kind of, they could be under like the branch of like electro house. So they all have their similarities, but their differences are like minor, but they all have like very similar things. So that's just my way of differentiating the two. I mean, the best comparison I made was like Matt Duke's song Disco Dancer. Compare that to the Zeko and Torres bassline kickin' remix. Like, you could tell just those two drops are completely different. There's some similarities, but like there's a totally different feel for the songs. A lot of the electro house that like I'm talking about when comparing these kind of Complextro songs are the songs you would kind of hear more at a rave event. So like something you'd hear at EDC, something with like a really big drop or something, you know, like like, and a big kick. So that's just kind of my breakdown or opinion about the difference between electro house and Complextro. Just my personal opinion. I could be completely wrong, but that's kind of where my definition is, and my kind of drawing the line for the difference between the two kind of subgenres are. So you'll see in this song, you know, why I like this song as well. So we're going to be breaking down and analyzing Laszlo's song Supernova. A couple things I want to get off before breaking it down as well is you'll notice the energy and upliftingness of the song is really cool, with also kind of a spacey theme. A lot of Laszlo songs on at least Monstercat, or the ones I like, have a very space-like theme to them. So I'll explain more about that later on, maybe in the middle of this breakdown or in the outro of the song. So let's start this breakdown now. Laszlo's song Supernova. So it's pretty cool to stop here. So basically there's a doom 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 kind of sound like that, kind of like a almost like arpeggiating sound. It's like a synth or a pad, but then it's really cool. There's kind of that kind of pluck bass almost like in between. That gives like a really nice effect there. In between gives that kind of little funky vibe. The kind of doom 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 sound kind of starts off the atmosphere and the ambience, setting up the rest of the song, kind of being in a kind of more space themed song. And the intro for this song is similar to some of the electro songs that we've seen in the past, maybe even house songs, where there's a more standard structure for you know, the intro with like a kick and a snare. So I think in this song it might be a kick on one, snare on two, so they might alternate. It might not just be a kick on each beat, a 4/4 kick. It might be kick, snare, which is cool. It's a little bit different, but still very structured. So you also hear in this part that the plucks are starting to kind of fade in or phase in or be introduced into this part. So nice transition there. right, so within that section you kind of hear you know, the plucks come in. There's kind of a 8-bit harpish type sound playing in the background, and then you also hear like almost two different leads, I guess you'd want to say. Like there's kind of a initial kind of lead cutting in and out, and then kind of the more main lead sound kind of coming in after that, halfway through that part, kind of phasing in and out, just kind of introducing that lead. And basically that's just kind of an introduction. And then you notice that the plucks get, you know, they have more timbre, more sound to them, they get fuller, and then eventually, you know, kind of quiet down with like a white noise rising to transition to where you get to this part here, where, you know, you have a lower plucks and a section like that to kind of build up into like a break section. So in this song there's kind of like a little break rhythm section before the build up, so we'll kind of stop in between those sections and analyze those. Alright, so in that section had quite a bit going on. So in the beginning it was pretty quiet with the plucks, then halfway through introduced like a hi-hat, and then transitioned into the kind of rhythmic break part. So there was kind of a lead sound playing. The sub had a lot of activity, as you noticed here in this section. Like the sub bass was playing quite a bit. There was a little kind of funky guitar, and there was kind of like an 8-bit sound in the background. But you notice it's kind of like a kick snare, kind of like a kick on one, snare on two, so kind of like alternating. And then halfway through it becomes a 4/4 kick with like kick and then kick snare. So the rhythm changes a little bit, gets a little bit faster. And then there's kind of the first lead sound playing, and then kind of transitions into the main lead sound. So there's like almost like a 2 different lead sounds playing, almost a little bit like a calm response in a sense, but they almost kind of like one takes up the space, one lead takes up the space, and then the other lead kind of takes in later, introducing the next part. So yeah, it's pretty cool. The plucks get, you know, more prominent in this section again, because they were kind of like lowered down by volume, and then they come up and then become more apparent. So, you know, fills up the space a lot more. And then, as I said, there's like little kind of funky pluck things, and I think there were like maybe some samples in between there, maybe like one-shot vocal samples in between there, but maybe really low in volume. So that section is pretty groovy. I think this section might be similar in the build up to second drop, so if it is, then I'll explain more in that section of the drop, but we'll just keep going into this build up. Cool. So I just wanted to mention that build-up was pretty cool. So it kind of had a lot more kick snare to it, and there was kind of a vocal sample to lead into the drop. So in the drop you hear the kind of white noise, you know, progressively building up, and then you have the lead being introduced, and then the sounds kind of are, you know, going through kind of like a high pass filter, or, you know, are being lowered in volume by automation. And then you kind of hear more of the kick in this drop, like kick snare, kick snare, kick 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 kick, and then like the snare almost like goes through like a high pass filter with it kind of being stacked, and then gives like a breath of air, and then it says "oh break," ooh, like a vocal chop, not a vocal chop, a vocal sample like that used before the drop, which is really cool. Gives it like a breath of air and gives it a different transition, with a vocal drop. I like to do that every once in a while in my songs too. It's more on unreleased songs. I don't know if I've really done it for a lot of my actual releases, but some songs that I've unreleased and worked on myself, I've definitely done that. My apologies there. But yeah, I like the breath of air he used and the vocal sample to kind of differentiate, and the use of the build-up. That's a build-up I don't normally do. Normally I do like a snare stack and then give a breath of air. I don't normally include the kick too often. I've done it in a couple songs, but more or less I use a snare build-up. So that's just a good learning point for me, maybe transitioning in the future, doing build-ups. So let's get it back into the drop. Alright, so in this section, you hear the kind of lead sound playing. It's a standard 4/4 percussion beat with a snare and some hi-hats playing as well to give the flow of the song, and then you have the lead playing, and you also have like an alternate, almost like bells kind of sound, playing an alternate lead while the chords are playing in this section. And then it plays out, and it's really upbeat, uplifting, and energetic, as and kind of feels like a song that you'd hear in like Mario Galaxy or a game like that. It's just kind of that kind of setting is what I normally visualize a song in. So that's really cool. And in this section here, it's pretty cool. So it's in this drop, there's two parts of the drop. There's the first part of the drop, which you heard right now, which is way more melodic with the lead playing and the bells or type lead, and then a chord progression playing on the bottom. And then now, you hear kind of like a sub drop, what you would call it, like kind of like a bass drop, almost like you hear doom, and then a white noise building up into this almost transitionary part into the second drop, or the second part of this drop. So we'll just listen from there. Alright, for me, in this section of the drop, this is kind of like my favorite part of the song. So this is what I would typically categorize as like a complextro type drop. You notice how a lot of the sounds, even though they were kind of wubbing and stuff, they were all kind of going in accordance to a chord progression. Whereas you notice in like the reference song I used earlier, the bassline kick in Zeko and Torres remix, the drop, I guess, in itself doesn't really follow a chord progression. It just is kind of like a lead. I don't know, I like these kind of complextro sections in a song when they follow chord progression. Not every complextro song does, but when they do like this, it makes them really special to me. I have a soft spot for a lot of those complextro type songs, but you notice in this section, like there's super saws kind of emphasizing the the chords, but then you have all the kind of wubs and stuff playing, and then there's there's still the 4/4 beat, but you know, there's like a lot of different layered sounds kind of stacked on top of each other, different glitches, yeah, different effects. So definitely you kind of see you know, Laszlo's kind of sound design and structuring and effects really in full display here with this complextro section. And you know, every time I listen to this section, you know, I'm like head bobbing over here, like, oh man, like grooving out, and, you know, head bobbing, pumping my fist, you know, in this section, like, yeah, let's go. Like, that's like the upbeat, you know, section of the song for me, and like I'd be head bobbing and stuff. So it's just kind of cool to note, like, this is kind of an example of complextro that I like in this section, and just the layering of sounds with all the different super saws and different kind of sound design wubs that Laszlo used, and the different effects of like glitching and stuff like that. It's really apparent in this section, and it gives like a really nice different feel versus like the first part of the drop, which is way more melodic. This section doesn't even have like a lead sound that's high pitched. It's just mainly focused on the chord progression and the effects and the wubs and the sound design. So the whole complextro section is pretty much just based on the, like, it's like making apparent the bass sound, the bass wubs and stuff, and the glitching effects and different audio effects. So really cool section there. And then kind of outros with the kick, and then we'll eventually kind of, you know, go back into the pluck section that it was similar to like the first break, and then build up kind of in a similar way. So we'll just see it here. And just in advance, sorry for the slow internet connection. My apologies. I wish I had faster internet, the video wouldn't load, but you know, that's how it is right now at peak internet time, I guess. So let's continue. Alright, I just wanted to note that this section is a little bit different. So the kick kind of continues after the drop, versus in the first break section the kick completely stopped, and then the piano, there was a piano sound that played along with the kind of intro kind of sound, the kind of introduction kind of arp. And then after that it kind of transitions into the break section, similar to the break groove section or rhythm section in the beginning part before the first drop. And it has the same kind of rhythm with a kick and a snare, kick on one, snare on two, so kick, snare, and then there's kind of kind of that almost 8-bitish kind of another arp playing, and then you have various vocal samples thrown in between, and kind of like bass samples thrown in between. And then I think it's going to transition quite like the previous drop, to where it's going to go from like a kick, snare, so kick on one, snare on two, and then a 4/4 kick with the snare on the 2 and the 4, so it's like kick, snare, kick, snare, a more traditional kind of EDM rhythm. So cool things to note. Alright, so yeah, the section was pretty similar to the last section, where, you know, the lead would come in and the rhythm would change, but it's pretty cool. The rhythm itself was pretty good, and the lead sound has like a lot of effects on it, so you know, when it would come in and out, there's like some delay and reverb on it, so it gives a little bit of a tail to transition in between when it comes in and out. So now this is going to be the build-up section. Alright, so in this section is actually interesting to note. So in this build-up section, it has some similarities to the first build-up, but this one actually has a lot more snare in the build-up. As you notice, it's not like, there's some kicks, but not as much as like the build-up into the first drop. And then you notice in this section, instead of a breath for kind of like a gap for a vocal sample, he actually has the lead sound that's being, you know, introduced in the drop. It kind of starts in that gap instead of a audio sample. So that's kind of an interesting thing to see there, because it's kind of a difference in the song in terms of building up. So it's not the exact same build up, copy and paste. There's actually like some variation between the drops, which is really cool. It's like a minor thing to tell, but it makes a whole world of a difference, because for me, I'm kind of a more lazy producer, and I kind of copy and paste drops. But after seeing how he has two different drops that are similar but a little bit different, I might reconsider, you know, giving some more variation in between drops in my songs. So this was a good observation for me in terms of producing, but that's just my observation and observing those two different build-ups for these two different drops. So we'll get back to the song now. Alright, so that drop section was pretty similar to the first section of the first drop. Although this time I noticed there was like a like a high frequency or higher pitch sound actually playing along in the drop section. So I think that is kind of like a trick I saw on a from the Dads in Space breakdown video Stephen Walking made, where you kind of have like a one note in the root key note kind of just playing, but in a higher pitch, you know, to give a little more timbre and a little more texture in the song. You don't really notice it, but it gives like the song a little extra flow per se. So that is something I noticed. And then also I noticed that this section of the drop is only, you know, one part of the drop. So much like the Hin Kick Outbreaker song, where it had a longer first drop than the second drop, this song is structured in the same way, where the first drop is sectioned into two different parts. So there's the first part of the drop, then there's kind of like a break building up into that second part of the drop, then it ends into like the middle break, whereas you know, this drop, there's only that first section, that melodic drop from the first section of the Supernova first drop. So it's just interesting how those two songs kind of parallel in terms of structure. So it does work, you know, to have a longer first drop and then a shorter second drop. Normally when I make music, I do a shorter first drop and a longer second drop, but it really depends on the artist. And for this song, it doesn't really take away from the flow of the song. So we'll listen to the outro now, and then I'll give my final thoughts on the song. Alright, so in the section where right after the drop where it's outroing, there's a kick snare rhythm, so kick on one, snare on two. There's that kind of 8-bitish sound, and then the plucks kind of playing. Not the chord progression, not the full chord progression per se, but like dun 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 dun, kind of like two notes from the progression kind of alternating, and then the lead kind of comes in and out, kind of like how it was in the build-ups of the song and in the intro of the song. And then slowly the kick and the snare fades, and some of the other sounds fade as well. And then eventually to outro the song, it's just a kick and a hi-hat. So the kick and the snare kind of eventually, phase down, and then it's just the kick and the hi-hat playing with the kind of same sounds as the intro of the song. So kind of that ambient sound with some intro plucks, and then there's that kind of weird and cool funky kind of bass guitar sample in there. And just kind of outros like that as a more traditional outro for an electro song. So overall, that's pretty much it for Laszlo's song Supernova. The song itself is super upbeat, energetic, and you really do get the kind of space feeling type vibes. Like, as I said, the song I can imagine in like Mario Galaxy or something as a really, kind of happy space game. I don't know, I kind of get that vibe from the song in general. And overall, the song is, in terms of structure, has a longer first drop than it does a second drop, but, for each song, it works differently, and for this song, it worked really well. It didn't take away from the flow or anything of the song, so I will say that this song overall is just designed really well. The pacing of the song is really good. The transitions were really good. There are some nice white noise sweeps kind of in between in the background that help keep the flow going, and there are nice little additions to timbres, like little high-pitched sounds playing and little arps playing here and there to kind of help the songs flow and just kind of give off that spacey type dance song vibe. So overall, I hope you guys like Laszlo's song Supernova. This song is amongst the top 5 songs for me of Laszlo's. My list for the Laszlo songs is Laszlo's song Interstellar, the song Supernova, his song Galaxies, and his song Gravity, from the songs I can think of off the top of my head. 3 of those songs are on Monstercat. One of those songs is a free release, and you notice with all the names that they have a space vibe to them, or a space theme. So he's really good with the space theme in terms of music. So overall, I hope you guys like the video. Leave a comment whether you like or dislike the video, and happy Thanksgiving to anyone that celebrates. I hope you guys have a good holiday and stay safe out there with how it's been going. It's nice to maybe have a family holiday and eat some good food. So overall, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and give a like, subscribe if you like the content, and leave some comments. I do read them for feedback. So hope you guys have a good holiday, happy Thanksgiving, and enjoy the video. Peace.